Hello and welcome back to the internet. So we've all heard many stories about the notorious Karen-type woman who likes to ruin people's days. Well, unfortunately for Puerto Rico, they're getting hit by the biggest Karen of them all. That's right, Tropical Storm Karen is making its way up through the bay. So good luck to everyone who has to put up with that. Well, we just might spot some Karens in our stories for today. Oh, but that's not a parking spot. I think this is the most petty I have ever been, and no need to ask if I was the a-hole, cause I totally was, but it tickled me and a few others. This happened a few weeks back and still makes my friend and I have a laugh about it. I do deliveries around our town, and as such, I need gas to do so. There's one gas station I hit up every morning before work because the gas is cheapest, it's on my way to work, and it has better selection of breakfast snacks and drinks than the others around it. Since I've been stopping off there a minimum of 3 times a week for the last 6 years, I've gotten to know the owner and a few of the longtime staff there. They're all good people and treat me nicer than normal employees do, so I try to treat them with as much respect as I possibly can. One morning while I'm filling up, one of the female employees, we'll call her Rachel for the story, was standing idly by one of the pumps. She has a few mental problems, but is one of the nicest people I know. So while my gas is being filled, I strike up a conversation. She tells me that she ain't doing so hot, because she's supposed to take out the trash from the outside bins and put it in the dumpster around the side of the building. The way the building is designed, there's only one way to get to the dumpster and put anything in it, and that way is clearly marked with signs and paint saying, "Do not park here or block the dumpster." I look over and there's a caravan of about 5 minivans parked around that area. Most were in legit parking spaces, but the biggest one with the massive roof rack was parked awkwardly in front of the dumpster, completely blocking it off. I asked Rachel if she had asked them to move, and she said that they would move when they were done, and that was over 30 minutes ago. I feel for Rachel and her sad face at the time, so I tell her I will make it up to her. After getting the nozzle put back up and my car ready, I drove over to where the van was parked, and parked my car in the first open parking spot behind it, effectively completely blocking it in. I get out of my car and walk about 5 steps away when a screeching Karen pokes her head out of the front window of the van. "Hey, can you move your car? I'm parked here." I was like, "Oh, but that's not a parking spot." She says, "Well, yeah, that's why I'm trying to get out of it." I was like, "Okay, but hold on, I'll just be a minute." I proceed to walk inside the store to get my morning meal, as I hear Karen screaming for me to come back. As the doors shut in the store, I notice the place is overrun with families buying travel snacks. They're all milling about, but a few are looking out the window saying, "I wonder what Karen is yelling about." They are clearly all in her caravan. By the time I grab my food and drink and make it to the checkout line, she has stormed her way in and is trying to tell me to move my car now. I tell her, "I can't leave, that would be stealing, so I'm going to buy my stuff and leave." She huffs at this and notices everyone in front of her is a member of the traveling party, so she just glares at me the whole time. I finally make it to the front after like 10 minutes and go, "Oh wait, shoot, this isn't what I wanted. I'll go put it back and grab what I really want." Luckily, I was still very early for getting to work, so I was milking it for all it was worth. Karen is fuming. When I make it back to the line, someone else is getting in line in front of me, and Karen is trying to tell him to move so I can go first. The owner, we'll call Jess, tells her that she isn't allowed to talk to customers that way, and one more outburst from her and she will kick her out of the store. Karen mutters to herself but is silent. I go up to checkout, moving and talking as slow as I can, and ask for a lottery ticket as well. After paying, since no one is behind me, I scratch it off. What do you know, I want a free ticket. So I buy another one and proceed to scratch it off. Karen to that point had been mildly tolerable, but then she let out this unholy screech and told me to stop wasting her time, to which Jess told her to leave. Karen starts to refuse and Jess picks up her phone threatening to call the cops. Karen is then swift to leave at this point, now yelling at her caravan as to why they have to wait. I thank Jess for all that she has done so far and explain what's going on, still really slowly. She laughs and tells me how much she hates people who park there. They get all defensive when you tell them that they can't park there, but this is the first time anyone got their comeuppance over it. I left and saw Rachel standing near my vehicle, doing her best not to laugh. I load up my car and ask if everything is better, and she nods enthusiastically. I move my car to the other side of the lot and watch them all leave one by one, but not before Karen pulled out in front of someone and almost wrecked. Yeah, just be glad she didn't go out and start beating up on your car, or just push it out of the way with her van. That's something I find kind of surprising, honestly. Like, you might run into some real aggressive people out on the road, and your car might be blocking theirs in, but I feel like I never actually see any aggressors actually just, shove your car out of the way with theirs. I guess the fact that it does damage to both vehicles is a good deterrent. Alright, now this next story is from TalesFromYourServer, but I'm going to hide the title. I work at a country club, and I was bartending a very busy wedding reception Saturday, and this one dude was bugging me all day. We have a limited bar. It was mostly a beer and wine crowd, and basic mixed drinks. And he wanted a specific shot during the cocktail hour that we cannot make, so I made something similar. And he likes what I make for him well enough, and says that's his drink of choice for the night. But then he also wants bottles of Sambuca and Jagger on ice. So I'm like, sure, I can throw them in the fridge and they'll be cold for serving later. Every time he came up to the bar, he would wiggle his eyebrows at me and say nothing, expecting me to just read his mind and line up some shots for him and his friends. So I just stare back at him and wait for him to use his words, like a normal human being, to order a drink. One time when he was up, he was bragging to his buddy about how he was friends with the bartenders, so we'll serve him first, blah blah blah. Which is so not the case, and I told them such. Basically the dude was just trying my patience the whole night. So later, it was probably past midnight, still very busy, I'm getting exhausted. The dude comes up for 4 shots, so I lined up the shot glasses on the counter, and am about to pour, when he grabs the glass and moves it. He apologizes, moves it back, and I go to pour it again, and he does the same thing, thinking he's being cute or funny. And I'm already past my limit with this guy, and without thinking, I say, F off, way louder than I should have. His girlfriend immediately laughs, because she's been giving me an apologetic look all night, like she knows he's been annoying. The guy kinda pouts at me, and I really thought he was going to have a fit and turn it into a big deal, but he eventually just laughs and put his hand up for a high five. I reluctantly high-five him and pour his shots and tell him to not do that again or I won't serve him anymore. He then slips me a 50 as he's leaving. It was an open bar where we get tipped out 15% from the host, so we don't really expect guests to tip us much. So I was kinda shocked. Yes, in the general public, in the professional world, it would most likely be seen as not acceptable to tell a customer to F off. But there are certain settings, a bar definitely being one of those, where the type of people that might be on the receiving end of that are more likely to just find it amusing. I mean, there's a whole restaurant in Las Vegas where the servers there are specifically trying to be the biggest jerks they can. I don't know, some people just like the different experience, I guess. Today I effed up by mistaking my coffee thermos for my wife's. So for Christmas, my wife got her and me matching coffee thermoses. Hers was copper tinted, mine was stainless steel. Apart from that, they were identical. I loved it, but after a while, being the absent-minded person that I am, mine goes missing. No biggie, I said to myself. My wife is staying home today, I'll just take her thermos to work. So I fixed me up a nice thermos full of black coffee, and headed out the door to work. This particular day was rather busy, and I had meetings back to back pretty much all morning. I had my thermos and laptop in tow, and was migrating from one of the conference rooms to another, when I realized I needed to run to the urination station. So I dropped off my laptop and thermos, ran and relieved myself, then stopped back to the cubicle to pick up a couple of reports for the meeting. While sorting through the papers at my desk, I reach over and grab my thermos and take a big swig of coffee. Immediately, a few alarms and thoughts went through my head. This coffee got pretty cold pretty fast today. That's odd. Also, I don't remember putting any cream or sugar in it this morning. That's odd. Also, what is this texture? At this point, still mid-gulp, I shift my eyes down to the top of the thermos, which has a clear plastic lid, and I notice a very large floating blob of mold, which I had just taken a sizable chunk out of. Also, I noticed the thermos is stainless steel, not copper colored. This was my coffee that had been sitting on my computer desk, in plain sight, for a month. Oh no, I thought, as I immediately reached for the trash can to try and lurch the coffee back down. But to my disappointment, it would not come back up. So I run to the bathroom and try a full-on puking position to try and get it back up. Again, no luck. I just knew I was going to get deathly ill. But actually I didn't get sick beyond the mental stress of having just consumed an entire family of slimy, chunky mold spores and rotten cream. I kinda know the feeling of this. Not with coffee, I've never actually had coffee before, but you've probably noticed I have like a ton of snacks always in here. And like I said, I don't really get through it that often, because I always buy stuff from Costco, so I just like have a big stash. So like, things just tend to go bad sometimes, and I don't really notice until I'm tasting it. And yeah, let's just say that after having a mouthful of mold from a particular bread roll that I used to like, I don't really like them much anymore. School-dazed versus the disabled. So my parents are absolute saints. They purchased a 4-bedroom colonial in the early 1980s, with property that borders an elementary school. In the 1980s, while they were planning on starting a family, this was a brilliant move. Both school and a playground basically in the backyard. It's a lovely, sleepy neighborhood in a great district. Fast forward to the early 2000s, my brother and I were already in high school. This school was absolutely overcrowded, and the district decides to save funds by slashing busing. If you do not live more than 5 miles from the school, you don't get a bus ride. Busing goes from 10 buses to 2. Thus, the stage is set for over 200 cars filled with the worst entitled parents, descending on our sleepy neighborhood every day, twice a day, parking all over the place in oversized SUVs on narrow streets that can barely handle 2 sedans passing each other. Tensions between the neighborhood and the school, well, the school parents, escalated steadily, until the next road over banded together to get one side parking during school drop-off and pickup hours. Why did it reach a peak enough to seek legal action? Because an ambulance couldn't get down the road to respond to an elderly neighbor's fall due to all these crappy entitled parents basically blocking the road. This shuffled half of those cars onto my parents' street. Tensions between the neighbors and the school parents were at boiling point. I tried to convince my parents to just move, but the housing bubble had just burst. Now, at some point, someone discovered a back exit to the school building near the other end of our road off a small dead end. I'm not talking a cul-de-sac, but an honest dead end with just 4 houses, 2 on each side. Cue the swarm of cars to that side of the road. So basically, our neighborhood is an impassable parking lot for an hour around dismissal. One of our neighbors on that street is a disabled woman. Lovely, sweet, older woman. But she has problems getting around and numerous medical appointments. But no problem, she had a slightly over-width driveway to make it easy for her to get in and out of her car. She came out of her house one afternoon on her way to the appointment, only to find someone had blocked her entire driveway. Fortunately, the driver, our entitled mom, was still in the vehicle. My neighbor approached, gently knocking on the window, and asked the woman to kindly move her vehicle to unblock the driveway. Our entitled parent decides the appropriate response was, no. My neighbor tried to explain that she needed to get to a medical appointment. Our entitled parent responds with, and I need to pick up my kid. My neighbor gently reminded her that she was blocking a driveway illegally. She just says, well, where else am I supposed to park? My neighbor just suggests another street a little further away that had ample parking that time of day and walk. She was having none of that. The mother decided to play the, but I'm disabled card, arguing that she couldn't possibly walk that far. To which my neighbor kindly pointed out that the school had plenty of handicap parking right by the main entrance. And that's when our entitled parents started cussing out my neighbor. In the end, my neighbor had to call the cops. This did not improve relations between the residents and the school. Well, that sounds like a fun situation. I really don't understand why they would put schools in such small, tight neighborhoods. Like, do they not realize that it's going to bring in a lot of traffic? Well, now we're going to ask the question, what was the last situation where some weird stuff went down and everyone acted like it was normal, and you weren't sure if you were crazy or if everyone around you was crazy? Out at a restaurant with my wife and her family, my mother-in-law starts choking on her food. No one does anything, so I go to help. I did basic first aid years ago. 5 hits to the center of back. Nothing. She's now foaming at the mouth. I go to try the Heimlich maneuver. On 3rd thrust, this huge lump of lamb comes out and lands on her plate. Her husband, son, and other daughter look at me, say nothing, and carry on eating their food. I sit down, look at my wife, and feel like I'm in an alternate reality. Did that just happen? Was it really that inconsequential? To this day, only my wife acknowledges what happened, and that I saved her mom's life in the middle of a busy restaurant. I twitch when I think about it, still years later. Well, did you ever think that you might have just foiled their big plan in that restaurant? We have a local superhero in our town, Polar Man. Goes around dressed in full costume all the time and helps out people around town. Really nice guy. I think he's on disability or something so he can't work, but he still wants to make the world a better place. The best part is new people seeing him for the first time and everybody else is just like, oh, that's just the Polar Man. Man, I feel like this was me when I discovered that there's just a wild turkey that roams around my neighborhood sometimes. I was just walking down the street and I saw this turkey, and I just decided to follow it because I had nothing better to do that day. And then later I come home and tell my roommate about it, and he's just like, oh yeah, you saw Rosie? Yeah, she wanders around here sometimes. There was a gas leak in the building where my first morning college class was held. The class still met. There was still a strong gas smell. So I questioned the safety of the situation. The teacher mocked me for being concerned and sarcastically said that he wouldn't take attendance if anyone wanted to leave. I was the only one who did. I had to text my husband to confirm that I was being reasonable. And then someone else says, our freaking building caught on fire at work and the fire alarm goes off. So I run outside and no one else comes out. They were all sitting at their desks, working with the 100 decibel fire alarm going off. I opened the door and yelled, that is a fire alarm. 4 people came out. The fire department was pissed that no one exited the building. We ended up having to do a bunch of drills. You know, I think this is a sign that your life is getting a little bit too first world, where you just automatically assume that nothing bad can ever happen to you. I feel like natural selection is really going to make a big comeback one day. I was working in the United Arab Emirates. One night, I was on a busy boardwalk with a lot of people from all over the world. This South Asian guy was standing by a lamppost, not really doing anything, when an SUV pulled up and 4 Emirati Arabs got out, grabbed the guy and threw him into the back and then drove off. They didn't yell, didn't show any police badges. The guy barely fought back. Nobody said or did anything, even though the street was crowded full of people. Well, the guy probably saw that coming one way or another. But hey, that's the end of our stories for today. Man, I'm recording this so late right now. I've been playing way too much WoW Classic. I'm gonna hit 60 today. So today this video goes up, I'm going to hit 60 tonight. Once I hit 60, I'm probably going to take a break and just go outside for a while. But anyway, thanks to everybody who watched. Eventually decided to drill a hole in myself,